Well, good evening. It is Monday, June 22nd, 2026. And at 5:01 p.m., I would like to call the work session of the Tipp City Schools to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Stevens, can you call roll, please?
Mrs. McMurray.
Here.
Mrs. Dillard.
Here.
Mrs. Ernst.
Here.
Mrs. Plyman.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. All present and accounted for. We do have a quorum and can continue this meeting.
Thank you. Next, can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda for the work session?
All motion.
Thank you. Second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Stevens, can you call the vote, please?
Thompson.
Yes.
Plyman.
Yes.
Dillard.
Yes.
Ernst.
Yes.
McMurray.
Yes. Motion passes. We can proceed. First on the agenda this evening is an update regarding an opportunity to discuss facility opportunities. And Mr. Moran, I'll turn it over to you.
See, back in April, I shared a list of things outside of the educational programming that our facilities have issues with in regards to safety, accessibility, and just overall experience. And since that time, we've got some ideas, not ideas, we wanted to provide some time and information to share with the board to see if there's interest in addressing some of those needs. The first part, though, I want to go is the financial capacity. Obviously, that starts with everything. So before we get into that, again, we need to understand the resources, commitments, and capacity for future capital investments into our facilities. And once we establish that, then we can look at, see if, well, are there things that we want to look at. So first off, so with the PK8 project, we're moving through. Things are still on track at both the PK8 and at the high school renovations. We're making good progress. We've identified a couple issues that we've had to address with steel and any other things that have come up. So, current projections would indicate we have roughly $3.5 to $4 million in contingencies, finalization project allowances, and just all closing out costs at the end of the project. And I'd say we're probably conservative on that number. In addition, we have investment earnings that we've been able to achieve with the bond dollars as well, which represent another $3.5 to $4 million. And again, conservative on those things. And again, all these are subject to the final investment performances and project completion. So between that, we have roughly $7 to $8 million that could be utilized when available for investment in our other facilities. And then on top of that, there could be some, fundraising support that could be done. And if that were to be done, I think that would need to be district-led as well. So, again, while these are preliminary, they're not final, and not considered final until obviously the end of the project. But assuming these funds are available, is the board interested in exploring future facility improvements for safety, accessibility, student opportunities, and long-term facility stewardship? And those would go towards, again, football stadium, city park, track, baseball, softball, which I outlined back in my notes in April. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Obviously, if that's something that the board is interested in doing, there's a lot of planning that needs to take place before we could actually do anything and decide upon, but that's why we want to have those conversations now. So really just kind of want to have a consensus. Is there interest in it? Not what it's going to be, what it looks like or anything like that, but is there interest in long-term investment in those facilities or other facilities that may come to people's mind that we should be looking to consider while this opportunity is there. And I'd just like to pose that to all the board members and have a dialogue about that. Obviously, there's no decision-making going on right now. This is informational discussion for the board. So who would like to?
Well, I just want to make sure that I remind everyone that I did have the bond language put into the documents so that you can see there is a clause in there that replacing existing equipment and constructing various permanent improvements, school district-wide, as necessary in connection therewith in the principal amount, and then the original amount was $87,008,933. That was what the bond was passed at. That came down to 78. I can't remember what exactly.
Worth about 9 million less.
9 million less than originally, because of the sale of, is that the sale?
No. We just, going to
The cost.
costs going into,
Correct. Okay.
from an ELP to the
CFAB.
CFAB project
Thank you.
and the state support for
Okay.
everything.
Correct. So, I just wanted to make some background information, just knowledgeable that there is a clause in the bond language. The bond amount was reduced originally, and just keeping that in mind, and also reminding that this is not a time that we're not making decisions, we're just opening the door for the possibility and what that might look like. So now I will open it the floor.
Is
Mr.
this,
Thompson?
Is it a case that, and you probably answered this before, so forgive my ignorance. Is this a case of that money is kind of a use it or lose it type situation? Will that money have to be turned back over to the state unless we use it for the purposes that?
No,
Okay.
no, the money's dedicated to the project. We had additional contingencies and upgrades into the project that we may not need to use because of things going well in the bidding that has already occurred for the project.
Okay.
Yeah, all state funds are for the project only. Anything that's not used state fund wise will be the state's. They're not going to release anything they don't need to give to us.
Gotcha.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, so let's say, for an example, maybe this might help. Let's say we spend $1 million less with the building contingencies at the high school, for example. If we don't spend, the project comes in $1 million less, the state will take 42% of that, and then we would get 58% of that back
Right.
locally. But only in that project-based contingency, that's part of the, they have soft contingencies, hard contingencies, all those contingencies,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
So I have a follow-up question. So that $500,000 or $600,000 that we would keep locally, would that go back to paying down the bond?
That
Like,
would be.
what happens to that funding?
That would be where the board would make some decisions. I think, and I'm not 100% sure on that it would go right into PI, permanent improvements, I believe, unless it's designated something different.
We could pay the debt down.
We could,
Yes.
but if the board if the board doesn't make decisions, I think it goes into permanent improvement for the district, the permanent improvement funds to address any facility needs.
Well, the bond issue itself, we have to spend it within 5 years.
Yeah,
And if we don't spend it within 5 years, the interest we can keep, but I believe the bond proceeds that we still have on hand, that would have to be paid back.
So the advantage that we would have is, since we have this contingency and the money is already there, we have the opportunity to do some things for which we may have to go out for extra money if we don't do it now, in the future. This is money that's there, it's already kind of accounted for, the community has already approved funds that go towards things like this. if we have that left over, we're basically considering, let's do some things with this since it's there, so that we don't have to, in the future, whenever a bigger need arises or we realize we have some issues or whatever, we don't have to go out to the community for another bond, or we don't have to ask for more money elsewhere, or allocate
Yes.
funding.
There's some serious concerns with some of these areas that I think long-term, if they're not addressed, they're going to potentially cause bigger problems.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just wrapping my head around
Mhm.
why we would be considering doing this, so.
Lydia?
Mr. Stevens, I actually have a question at kind of how the funding works. The money that's left over for the project itself, is it, you have to do a matching, just for my edification? Does the local funding and the state funding have to do some sort of matching, or can we use the state funding first and then whatever's residual is the local?
It's all currently matching. Any bill I
Okay.
get is charged out between the 42-58%, and then there was a LFI portion to that.
Okay.
So they have me pay the LFI portion, and then they break the rest down between state and federal, or state and local, and that's for all of the bills. And so we're paying that down, and if the project were to be completed, and we still had funding in our 010 fund, the building fund, we would still have that money there. And then the state just wouldn't have to issue any more money to paying more invoices.
Okay.
So we are currently paying evenly along with this, I shouldn't say evenly, but we are spending our money at the same time that they are, which is the major difference between the ELP program and the CFAP program, which ELP was, we pay everything up front, and then we try to get reimbursed in the end by the state. So now, it's much better to be in CFAP because they're putting their money in at the same time we are.
Cindy?
The money is put into, I want to use the correct budget term, so it's put into the
They're capital project funds.
capital project, which means it can only be facilities, can't be any kind of instructional or anything
Correct.
like that, or upkeep. But, well, I think it's great that we put the language in there. I think that we are, with the building going as well and we're saving money, we should take advantage of this opportunity to upgrade some of the things. I think our track is, there are no locker rooms. We have porta potties at baseball fields, the stadium at the park. Of course, we don't own that, and I wish we had a little more control over that, but we need to do some upgrades if the stadium's gonna stay at the park. It's a serious concern. I talked to Aaron about this at one of the very first football games. The gravel situation, it's not, I went to a band event, all the bands coming in, and they're like holding on to those big drums, going down hills, to get onto the field and off the field. And I just do really feel that if we are saving money on our main project, that we should be fiscal agents and we should be using the money wisely. We put it into the document, and we should be using the money wisely to upgrade some of these structures that have, they're just behind the times. If you go to other schools, it's just, and all of our athletics are doing so well. I sent Aaron an email earlier this week about, I know that there are upgrades. I'm not, I didn't go back and look exactly at all the upgrades at the high school, but the front parking lot has some issues too with water pooling. I had a nice flood on my shoes when going to an event. And it was, so we just need to keep our buildings up to par. Our students and our staff are performing high. We need to reward them with outstanding and excellent and up to state-of-the-art buildings, so.
I also want to add on to that, if we are comparing ourselves to other districts in our conference and within the area, everybody has a choice on where they want to move their families and where they want to live. And our athletic facilities, and I'm even gonna go as far as to say our performance center at the high school, also needs some upgrades desperately. My daughter was involved in Stagecrafters, which was absolutely an amazing experience. The first night, there was all kinds of issues with the sound. You can see on the stage, the wood is warping. I think there's definitely some upgrades that need to be done there. And again, if we want to continue to thrive, not only for our students, but as a community where families would move and we would have a continuation of students coming through Tipp City, I think then we need to upgrade our facilities. I'm going to put it out there, it's embarrassing. When you go to other districts for competition and you see their state-of-the-art facilities, whether it's an indoor facility or an outdoor facility. I mean, I don't need to list all the things at the city park, but I will say this. My son played soccer last year, and his grandfather never was able to go watch him play a game because the gravel is so unsafe as it is right now that I could not take the chance of him falling because he walks with a cane and injuring himself. That is embarrassing. And then to have Troy bring in their own bleachers and there's no locker rooms, there's no ADA, nothing's ADA accessible out there. It is a detriment to our students. It is not accessible, it is not equitable, and it's a detriment to our community. And I think that if we don't have these serious conversations now and start to think about a plan, shame on us. That's what I have to say.
So I have, I think, I want to just start and acknowledge all the things you said. I think the stadium in particular is a difficult situation in part because we do not own that
Correct.
facility. And I'm grateful to the Tipp Pride organization and the
Absolutely.
changes that they made that were student focused, getting new turf, getting new facilities so that the organizations that come in to raise money have what they need from a booster perspective. I'll say that I think it's great that the language is in there to provide for additional improvements. I am concerned at what we asked of our community. We were so specific, and I think for really good reasons, in the language that went to our voters. We said we want to do these things, and then there's this clause that says, and replacing existing equipment and constructing various permanent improvements district-wide as necessary in connection therewith.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that, so one, I think that I am delighted with the stewardship of the district and the buildings that we have and the prices that we are getting. I am concerned that if we're going out and starting to do other things that were not specifically listed or are not connected with the things that were listed, that we're starting to go beyond what the voter base was in approving this. So that is my concern. And I'm not downplaying any of these facility needs at all. But I am concerned that when we went to the voters, and when the board went to the voters and asked for this, we were asking for schools. And if we start to put things out that were track and athletic facility and the city park, that there's the perception that we did not go to the voters to ask for that, and they may have said no if they were given that choice.
I think with this, it's a really good point, Katie. And Andy, thank you for your comments about your experience not being able to take your family member. That's gotta be very, very tough. I think having a long runway actually gives us the benefit of foresight, not hindsight, and especially in conjunction with the city redoing their parks and their initiative right now, to either work with them or allowing the divesting of properties to them in the process. The comments that I've gotten over the last couple months talking to athletic parents is asking to look forward into the future, not just revamping the current facilities, but actually looking forward to making it so that when the high school is where the middle school is now, the band and the football team could walk down, and people could line the streets, and it was a community event. And that a big concern for parents that I've heard on the football team is the students having to drive each other down to practice because it is so far away. Conversely, I'm hearing the nostalgia aspect of that field has been a field for as long as I have memory of. I'm sure you as well, and Cindy probably as well. But maybe bridging the gap as far as, did the community give us those funds for these things, and asking for their input of giving them the option. Do you want to keep the field there, or potentially move it somewhere that it's more able to revamp those things of like walking to the stadium, and maybe that ask kind of bridges that gap and allows them to feel like their input is heard, and so that money will now not feel like they were tricked into it, but instead feel like they have an input.
I personally think the reality is that as long as we have something that is school used on property that's not school owned, we're always gonna have these problems. So if we dump money, even if it's minor improvements, into something like the City Park Stadium, that unless there was some kind of deal somewhere along the line in the future to where the schools took ownership of that property somehow, I don't propose to know how that might happen. But I think that there are gonna be complications no matter what. It's almost as if you're living in a rental home and you continue out of your own pocket to make improvements to that home, but you're never gonna own it. There's no ROI, there's no, in the end, the landlord could come in and just tell you, sorry, you're out, or all the money that you dumped into this, thanks for doing that, but I don't care. You know what I'm saying? And we have great partnerships with the city, and I'm not accusing anybody or proposing that they would even act like that. I'm simply pointing out the fact that I think we have a decision to make as to whether or not that is a long-term solution for our athletic programs. And Katie, I understand your concerns. I think they're valid, and I think I think it should be acknowledged and talked about, but at the same time, I don't think it should be a reason that we don't propose doing something of this nature. I think transparency is key. I think we should say, hey, this was built in and it wasn't necessarily specified for this use. However, we have possibly a generational opportunity with money that's not easy to come by to do some things that we think everybody across the board is going to have, or they're going to be happy with. I don't know of anybody who would be upset with a better situation at City Park, and I'm not saying improving that facility is the answer. Personally, I would love to see something on school property. And I know we're talking about years down the road before something like that can happen. But I just can't reconcile, without us owning the property and being full stewards over it, I can't reconcile dumping a bunch of extra money into it and it eventually becoming something that we don't, or that can be taken out of our control, or that we don't have, favorable lease terms on, or whatever the case might be. So, and this is obviously not the only situation we're talking about. There's other improvements that we can consider around, but I think this would be the one that's top of mind for everybody. I think it would be the one that would resolve some of the biggest issues that we've got, both in public perception and in practicality in terms of how we operate. So I don't know that the solution is to do anything more than minor improvements to City Park. I think the long-term solution is to do something on one of our properties. And there's the Broadway property thing that's gonna come up as we enter into the final stages of this bond issue. Maybe that's a potential stadium location, who knows? There's all kinds of different options, but at the end of the day, I would hesitate to say all that money should go into doing something at the City Park, and I'm looking over there, just got pictures of it.
Yeah.
So it's appropriate, and that looks so much,
That looks
that looks amazing.
amazing.
That were to be the final plan, if that's what we're having, but unfortunately, we are where we are, so in any case, that's just my thoughts.
I also would like to see, obviously I agree with Katie. I have I talked with Aaron about the clause in here, the language in here, you know, making sure that this is something legally that we can do as far as our conversation that it is. I think that we were transparent enough with the community that when we had an opportunity to return, to reduce the amount of money that would be needed for this project as a whole, that was almost 10 mils, so $10 million of it. So, you know, I think that that was an amazing thing that we were able to do off the go. I agree with Kyle. This is generational. This is long after, you know, our kids are through and maybe we're not on the board anymore. This is an opportunity to leave a legacy for the community. I would also like to know, I know that originally when the high school was built and the new high school was built and completed, that there were original plans to put a stadium next to that. I don't know all the history. I did not live I had briefly moved out of state at that time. So what is that history? Why didn't it go? What is the constraints of that space? You know, what is there? Is it a size constraint? Is it an ecosystem, a geological constraint? I don't know what that is. I also know that across the street from that space next to the high school is currently for sale. You know, is this an opportunity to look at that sooner rather than later, just so that, I mean, I don't know what that could be, but I would hate for it to be something that would be, if we wanted to, if there was a build out there, that it would cause an issue with parking or movement through there. But, you know, but if by having control of that lot across the street, I don't know. I'm throwing out ideas, things that my mind is thinking about logistically and questions that I have as far as that is concerned.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, Katie,
Okay.
can I ask one question really quick? In your mind, Mr. Moran, obviously this has been very focused on the football stadium and the city park. In your brain and in your opinion, would that be the top priority to address with some of this money? Or are there other things that we're not even discussing here right now that you're saying, hey, potentially this might be more important or as important as the city park issue?
The accessibility at City Park is a problem.
Okay.
So how it's addressed, you know, I think there's all kinds of ideas, potential out there. When you look at the high school, you know, you have the practice fields there. And then we own that farm field just to the west of that. You know, is that a possibility to address a track in a football stadium? I don't know. I don't know, you know, I know there's a lot of bedrock. From my understanding, that was part of the problem with
Okay.
the high school building was bedrock, is my understanding. And would that be better if everything was there? Two, City Park, with the master plan, I don't know if there's space to address all the needs that would need to be done. Could that be not just, you couldn't build anything. You got the Miami Conservancy District that you have to address, work with the city. I'm less concerned with working with the city, because we don't, it's not like we're paying $1. And we'd like it to, we'd like to make it so it's a win-win for the community, obviously. That's the whole purpose of things. But is there ideas that, you know, depending on what you do, could that still be a soccer stadium? And maybe you don't need the locker rooms like you do for other events. But restrooms, accessibility, that doesn't change. So I think there's all things that need to be looked into. And I guess what I'm hearing is interest, there's concern about transparency. But a lot of it's gonna be, you know, coming to a consensus would be, I think the board's gonna have to figure that out. What is it that, how to go about that? But really contingent on the plans and location, it sounds like it's a big issue for some people. That we would have to, but until we delve into it or even look at it, is there a will to begin the process? You know, to start looking at those things. What are all the possibilities to do? If there is, you know, we move forward. If there's not, that's fine. We got other things, we got plenty of other stuff to address. I just think, again, it needed to be brought forward as an opportunity. It may not be the right time. If it's not, that's okay. But something needs to be addressed.
The one thing I don't want us to do is to go down the road and say, you know, I don't want us to put money into the current track when a new stadium would have a beautiful track on the property. Why would we waste money redoing a track that's outdated? And if we were planning, but I don't want to go to the community again and ask for more money to build a new stadium. And if we have an opportunity with some money now, I think we really need to look at this very seriously. If you said $7 to $8 million possibly, correct?
Available. Yeah.
And I have no idea what
I don't either.
that sort of thing.
Go ahead.
So I met with Tipp Pride last fall, and met with someone who was the Tipp Pride is defunct. There's no more organization, but I met with Scott George, who is part of that, and learned more about the history, because some of that happened before I was in this community. And so what I learned from that conversation was that Tipp Pride did a study in the late 2015 to 18 timeframe, where they evaluated the high school site and they evaluated City Park. City Park came to about $6 million to renovate it, to bring it up to the things that are beautiful and look like that. The high school site was going to be $8 million, and the driving part of that was the fact that there were the parking was really limited. That City Park was grandfathered in with regard to the parking requirements. And my understanding is they took it to the Board of Education. Board of Education voted to keep it at City Park. And that is what then led them down the pathway of making the investment in the City Park site. So I think there's some history there that would maybe be helpful to have bring someone from the back of the board to learn more about that. The plans for that are still held by the Tipp Pride organization at Bruns. And so if that would be a process to talk with the folks who are part of that. Again, it's defunct. It's no longer an IRS approved official organization because they disbanded it. But the plans are there. And that are approved by the Miami Conservancy District, et cetera. So if we want to go forward, it might be useful to learn more about what they did and the choices that that board made that would help us.
Lydia?
I liked your thought on the property, just as far as is traffic going to become an issue going forward, and just thoughts on two things. One, Troy Christian, if possible, since we have that long runway, partnership with some corporate entity that could potentially really defer a lot of the extra costs. And having that site along the highway, having that visibility really would be a lot more tempting than having it back inside of the city. And then secondarily, I don't know if anyone's been up to Piqua and their stadium, which has the track and field surrounding the football stadium. And I think that dual use, we could actually have extra utilization of parking and even having additional space over at the high school for parking already. I think it's really something to look into, but I would really like to have community feedback as to what they want to see, just as a general rule.
Is there an opportunity to, I think right now, Mr. Moran is, and I apologize if I'm reading this incorrectly, Mr. Moran is looking for us to come to a consensus and say, yes, we would like to move forward with looking at options, and that would be maybe a committee of the community, maybe a survey, maybe looking at the legalities and the land and what the geologic issue at the site by the high school is what it entailed historically with the perceived plans from Tipp Pride. Putting all those, things down, but I think the main thing that I think I hear you say is, are we looking, whether it's the football, only the football field, or it's looking at anything, are we
I think there
going
needs to be
move
some
forward?
priorities,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
What is the priorities, a track football stadium? Is that kind of what I'm hearing in some respects? Is that something that is a priority? And then maybe the baseball, softball is a second priority, a next level piece type of thing. Because I could look at all different priorities, but I'm looking, what is it that you're looking, what is something that you want us to move on?
To narrow
Not
it.
say move on, but to start investigating, provide feedback on administratively.
Just can you provide some insights on the baseball, softball fields and kind of what that looks like operationally right now for what we have? And
So operationally, accessibility is an issue too. When you go there, the sidewalk ends right by the dugout concession stand, and it's all gravel the rest of the way. Restrooms are porta pots on the right field baseball fence. So there's none of that. That's for athletes and for spectators. There's no other restrooms. The track facility is just a very old facility in regards to some of the restrooms and facilities there. I think those things all need to be looked at. With the renovation of LT Ball into the board office, right now we use the south side of LT Ball. We open that up for tennis, so visitors can come in, use the restrooms, even though, again, we need to upgrade those things, but it's at least an indoor place. There's actually another porta john out there too, but is that something that we should look at structuring for that? So those are two of the big issues, or restroom accommodations, accessibility, and then track, just that whole concession stand, restroom, storage area, I think need to be looked at.
I know that we don't want to invest a lot of money in the short term for that long-term runway, but, I think accessibility and appropriate restrooms for our athletes and our spectators in the community is a short-term need. So, what would financially that look like to at least have those things taken care of in the short term so that we can function enough to get to that longer trajectory?
And that's where I was gonna go with this. If we were talking about priorities, to me, it would be, let's figure out the cheapest and most efficient way to address very real and present needs that we are going to be facing this fall. You know what I mean? This issue's not going away. So we have to have, in the meantime, while we're trying to get to something else more long-term, I think we've got to do something. And it's likely that we're gonna have to part with 10% of the total number that we're talking about to do that. It's not gonna be a small amount of money, but I think we have to balance that. I think we have to keep in attention two things, the very real short-term needs and then try to plan for the future. So if I were to put a priority on it, it would be let's figure out what it takes to address the very real needs that we have right now without going overboard and without doing anything that's saying, hey, this is gonna be our 20-year plan. And then I would love for movement forward on exploring a new site, whether that be on the high school property or the adjacent farmland that we've got or whatever. But I think that's the most clear and present issue that we have, and that is gonna be the thing. That stadium attracts much more of a crowd. This is no offense to any of the other sports, but football and soccer are like the two biggest things that that attract the crowds, and the stadium needs to be able to support that. So to me, I think the priority would be a long-term solution to that, but also taking some of that and dealing with the short-term issues that we have. So that would be personally what I would consider the priority. And then before all of that, making sure the community is very aware of the clause that was built into the bond language and what we feel like is appropriate to do with that.
Can we use money before our main project is completed?
I mean, there'd be some, it would be using our permanent improvement funds. We'd have to dedicate for immediate usage. Those types of things, or general funds to address those things.
And then we would be sort of hoping on the back end that we could recoup that with whatever savings we would have by the time the project's done.
Not necessarily. I don't know if that's, I think you just have to spend it and spend it wisely, intentionally.
Well, I'm saying, we would be taking an estimated gamble on that, right? If we were saying, like, we think we're gonna have $8 million left over. That's saying, that's if everything goes pretty well, and we don't have any major issues that come up at all during the construction process. If
Yeah.
we were to go with a number like that and spend that out of permanent improvement or general funds,
You're talking immediate, you're talking hundreds of thousands, you know, you're not talking millions of dollars for that. So you're talking about short-term fixes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could do in a year.
for accessibility.
For
issues,
accessibility,
things like
yeah.
that. Okay.
You're not talking, you know, $1 million isn't going to revamp City Park in any stretch. But the accessibility piece, you know, immediate accessibility piece, is that something we could do? We can look into it and see what options with a, you know, a cost. But that's, you know, people getting to and from the restrooms at City Park, up and down. I mean, it got washed out pretty severely just with the flooding and the big rains we've had. And it's not, you know, it's just wear and tear. The rock keeps coming down. We need something better. I mean, I help quite a few people get up and down the hill when I'm at the football games. And there's people there are very cautious about that, but they want to support our kids. They want to be at the games. I think that's important.
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah. Is it appropriate if we could just take a soft, I mean, we're not voting for anything, but just like, hey, just kind of get the pulse of where we are as far as the short-term accessibility piece, looking to see if that is accessibility at the football field, the baseball and softball fields. You know, I don't know, I'm not talking about building a whole new restroom facility, but I don't know what that looks like. I am not a contractor. I have no idea what those costs would be. But it is appropriate to maybe just, would like to get a pulse of where we are to look at that short-term need and where that money would come from and what that potential cost would be. What are you feeling?
Were all of our track away this year?
The next
Yes.
2 years.
Next 2 years? 'Cause-
Well, excuse me, this past year and next year.
Yeah,
Because
because
of
we,
construction.
because we had also talked about the track itself is
Mhm.
kind
Yes.
of warped.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
not a safe thing for
Mhm.
our kids to be running on, so we've got a little bit of time there if all the games are away.
The practices are at home.
Yeah.
I mean, still practice there.
Practice, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking.
Yeah.
So getting a pulse, short-term accessibility, safety, what short-term? Where are we?
I'm in favor of asking for a list of what those things would be.
Correct.
I'm interested in the investment of time to develop a list, and maybe a prioritized list of what those things are. I'd also like to know how much of that would be focused on just athletics versus athletics, and what would be also used as part of the classroom instruction. Like, do they go out to, is their intention to go out and use the track for PE since the new building is up and running? That, I think, is part of just communicating, like, you know, how are we using
They-
it, so.
So, to answer your question, they do that now. They use the tennis courts
Yeah.
for classroom purpose. They use the track, they use the softball diamond for
diamond.
kickball,
Yeah.
you know, different things. So it is something that would be utilized.
Mhm.
It's being utilized now, and I think when it's combined, it would be even more utilized.
Okay.
But if the idea is, can we get if you, the board like, we need to get a list of safety and accessibility costs for immediate short-term fixes with associated costs.
Is that appropriate,
And then,
Lydia?
I would say as long as we are utilizing as many existing facilities, even though it might not be 100% convenient, like opening up LT with the restrooms, things like that.
Right.
We can look at maintaining that instead of potentially building anything, then I'd be there.
Absolutely.
when I see accessibility and safety, I'm looking at accessibility as people walking to and from events, and then safety would be making sure we have the safety things there to allow people to get where they need to go. Not necessarily, restrooms to me aren't necessarily a safety, even though I think that would be, it's needed, it's not a safety piece. So, and again, this would probably, the short term would really come from the general fund piece, permanent improvement pieces. It wouldn't be something probably from leftover dollars, but we can work on that and bring a list forward as soon as we can.
And I think also part of that, it would be helpful, I don't know when the clock started on that 5 years. Is it when we passed the bond? Is it when?
It was when we got the money, so.
We got them from the.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's either July, August, September of 2024. So we have until 2029, mid to early, late 2029. And we'll also have to complete the arbitrage calculations by then, so we'll know what interest we would have to return, if any. So,
And for that timeline, does all the money have to be spent by then, or does the project have to be started so how does that, like, sometimes those timelines actually make
Correct.
a real difference.
that I'm not sure. I believe the project, I think the projects, the PK8 high school renovation projects need to be done. I'm not sure if there was something else that we determined needed to be done,
Okay.
but we can find that out.
So Dave, can you find
I
out
think
the
that's
timeline
important,
piece?
yeah. I think in the meantime, since we are stewards of the community, one thing that we can do, it sounds like Lydia's had some conversations, I have too over the years, I think we all have. I think it would behoove us to go and have conversations within the community and different pockets within the community who have different needs and say, we hear you, we know that there are short-term things that need to be done so that our students, I mean, let's not forget, we host band competitions at the city park as well. We need those to be safe as well for those individuals that are marching. I mean, I can't even imagine carrying some of that equipment, what they have to go through to get it there. So, I think saying, hey, we hear you, we want short-term to be accessible, safe, and usable for all. But, hey, if you're out and about and what is a priority for you? You know, if, and this is not if we would have this funding, if we're looking to the future, what would your wish list be? What would that look like for you? What is important for you as a community member? Because not everyone is a parent and has kiddos in the school that are gonna be using those facilities. So what does that mean for you, as a community member? And I think we can do we can take a pulse. There's 5 of us. We can talk to people. And then that's just a soft little, collecting of information. And then before we would move forward with anything more concrete. Is that appropriate?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I appreciate this conversation. I think it's been a long time coming. And I appreciate the questions, how everyone is seeing this and feeling it. So I think this is a good conversation. And as things come up, please let Erin and I know so that we can make sure that we're documenting everything. But I think Erin and Dave know some of the logistics and financial things and legal things that they need to make sure that they look at. So, is that appropriate?
Yep.
Great. Next, home event safety. Mr. Moran?
So over the last few years, and especially at City Park, some things have come up that we've got to deal with some disruptions or activities that need to be addressed. And so we want to review our operational practices. We've looked at conference schools. Some conference schools have responded already. Some more are going to respond. That would enhance safety, improve supervision, reduce disruption, and promote a positive experience for students, family, staff, and community members. Again, we're not looking for any, not promoting any recommendations now, just seeking some feedback. And it's basically around continuing. We want to continue to provide opportunities for everybody to enjoy games and activities. And at the same time, we experience increased challenges related to supervision, crowd management, alcohol, and other disruptions. We've reviewed some practices, and if you've gone to various events, especially at the state level, there's a lot of different. There's a big difference between what their guidelines are and what our guidelines are, right? When you're looking at entry procedures, no reentry. Once you leave, you're gonna have to buy another ticket to get back in, right? Right now, it's open at halftime, the gates are open, and anybody comes in and out. Is that the safest thing for us to be doing? Backpack and bag restrictions, outside food, beverages that come in. Is that something that we should be addressing? You go to other events of large people. They don't, I think at Xavier, for the district tournament, you couldn't bring a person. There's no bags. And when you look at some of our conferences, they have some of those policies. So I think those are things that wanted to, in the entry procedure of how we get people in safely and with what should we be looking for, not allowing or disallowing, should we be addressing. I want to get the board's thought on that before going to some other things. So what's reasonable expectations for people coming into events?
Is this for football?
It could be for all of them.
I was gonna say, as far as
It's
I'm
more
concerned,
obvious at the
Correct.
football games, but in the basketball games, you've got stuff going on in the hallways
Absolutely.
too.
And
things.
even the plays and the
Yeah.
performances, like I said, you just walk in, I just went to a game at the Red Stadium this weekend, and it was, you had to have a clear bag, and they even said, if you go out, you're not coming back in. No, yes, they did, sorry, well, they did. But I'm just saying, I also go to NFL games and things like that, and if you go to the Schuster Center, they have bag restrictions, they have,
Yeah, as women, we know that your purse has to be.
yes, yeah.
Packed full.
But one of the things is if you go out, you can't come back, or you have to buy another ticket. That's for a lot of the things, so.
I think some of this is valid and should be thought of and concerned, but practically speaking, we have difficult environments to enforce this stuff. Because, for example, just at City Park, I know that we have pretty restricted entry, like there's a one gate on the, I don't know what side of the property that is, but closest to the road.
On the north side and on the southwest side.
Yeah. But those fences are pretty short. There's lots of areas that people could go if they really wanted to get in, they can hop the fence and not be seen. The parking lot being right next to it, if you knew that there was a no re-entry policy, it's not hard to be able to do those things. Whereas if we had a different facility that was more secure, I don't know how you do any of this at all at the baseball or softball fields. I don't think it's possible. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be thought about or looked at. I'm saying the practicality of enforcing some of these things is going to be difficult unless we spend money in a pretty decent measure.
Some of it may be indoor versus outdoor. Some of it may be location that you know, we wanna enforce certain things,
Yeah.
but there's, you know,
Like our best opportunity to enforce this is probably basketball, just because that environment is pretty controlled and the entry is much more controllable than, you know, some of the outdoor stadiums and whatnot. And I don't think it would be that expensive to secure or create some of these procedures to secure the environment a little bit better. But, I think it's a real uphill battle for some of our outdoor venues.
it definitely would take some thinking and enforcement on how we would deal with those things.
How can we engage community members too? Because the events that I've gone to at the football stadium, I'm just kind of shocked at fan behavior. You know, language, bringing in their own alcohol in their containers, you know. I've seen it, and I'm just like, I feel like we need to engage the community and let them know what's acceptable behavior. You know, we're role models for the kids. And, you know, when you're sitting in the stadium and the guy or the woman, you know, 3 seats back is yelling the F-bomb every other word at the kids, I just think it's inappropriate. I feel like, you know, like I want to stand up and go, you should really leave. That's what I feel like saying.
Well, Cindy, as a board member, you can tell them to get out.
No.
I'd like,
But it's,
But it is that, but those things don't help like you mentioned, the alcohol and stuff, that doesn't actually help with fan behavior
Right.
and things like that.
Yeah, it's just, I think that, you know, and everybody needs to be, you know, like, even some of the kids, you know, it seems like the parents drop their kids off and the kids are running up and down and unsupervised. And I just think that there needs to be like a fan handbook or something, what's appropriate behavior.
Yep, and that's something that, again, on the regular policies, again, is that something that we should be having expectations for? That, because I yell at kids to quit running because, you know, that it's
It can make somebody fall down,
100%.
including me.
But we don't necessarily have that expectation, but, you know, should we come up with the expectation that those kids they must have supervision? Is there expectations that they're not playing in the grass, especially at the football field, in the hallways, those types of things? That the behavior is not acceptable. I think that's been the practice of what's been allowed. That doesn't make it right or safe. So,
I agree, I think it should be addressed. I just, again, I guess where my brain malfunctions in thinking about it is the actual enforcement of that. 'Cause we've all been to those football games on Friday nights,
mhm.
and you'd have to have a fleet of security to actually enforce that stuff. And maybe that's the solution, I don't know. There is precedent for stuff like this. I was just at Kings Island with my kids a few days ago, and they have a supervision policy. They have, you know, nobody under 13 can be without a parent
Yep.
in the park. They have
Maybe
to
they're
have somebody.
18. They'll kick.
Is it 18?
Yeah, my son has to be 18 to be alone in the park now.
Okay.
No, I think it's all day, but they have to have an adult there with them
Maybe
in the
that
park.
read that then. So,
Yeah.
which I think is great. I think it's kind of wild that people just let their kids go off and do whatever they want. So, I mean, if we're willing to invest and it's a big enough issue that we need to hire a substantial security team to deal with these things, it's that important of an issue. I'm not saying it's not, I'm not saying it is, but I think it's gonna take something like that to be able to deal with this. And then we're gonna have to have very clear guidelines, and maybe that's information that's communicated prior to the upcoming school year.
Yep.
Like, hey, these are gonna be the new expectations and standards. If your kids are running around causing trouble at games, they're gonna be asked to leave.
Or it could be potential consequences at the school
Yeah,
level.
yeah.
I think this is also something that can be communicated through from the athletic director, because oftentimes at some of the smaller events, that's immediate family, potentially spectators of those that are competing. I mean, really having a conversation with the students who are involved, their parents, having that meeting and saying, these are our expectations. I can't think of a stadium anywhere that doesn't have, like, show the or have it on a ticket or something that says these are expectations. So I agree with you. I think that if we have the expectations, then we have to have a way of responding appropriately and enforcing it when that comes up. What does that look like? Again, now we're back to the short-term, long-term type things as well. But I have, in full transparency, have called Aaron a couple times and said, there are kids that are playing with a 2x4 that happens to be laying on the stadium somewhere. They're running down there, and I just saw a kid hit the light pole that has exposed concrete around it, and they're bleeding. And, who's liable? Is that us? Is that the city? I don't know. But, I watched it last year. I watched kids rolling down the hill, and they hit that concrete, and bleeding. So
Well, even
what do we do?
Even a security presence,
Right.
even an increased security presence makes a difference. And it's not marginal, because when people know that somebody's watching, it tends to alter their behavior. So the fact that that's not necessarily there, it's not necessarily a big part of these events, even partnering with the police department, if they would spare a few more, I know our resources are limited in such a small town, but, presence makes a big difference. I know at my place of employment, if we just have a police car in the parking lot, we've had families come up to us and thank us for that, because it makes them feel more secure. And it's not even that they're walking the building, or it's just a car in the parking lot. So I think there maybe are ways of taking some incremental steps towards this. And I think expectations are a great way to start. And then, figuring out what we can do, what's affordable, what kind of partnerships we can garner. If it is just a simple ask to walking right across the street from the police department saying, hey, you guys willing to spare a few more people just to make sure people know that the expectations are gonna be enforced.
I'm sure we could do that, they would just bill us for additional units,
Yeah.
additional men for the night,
Katie?
security.
So I'm really supportive of having police to help curb the alcohol. I think we want to probably have a lower escalatory stance with regard to the kids playing in the end zones, where we would start with communicating and maybe a non-police security team that would be enforcing that, because I think we have great relationships between our SROs and our kids, and I don't think we want to break that by having, bad interactions at a football game where we're still building expectations. So I think having, I worked security when I was at Purdue. I'm not saying that I was very effective at that. But, there were students that were security, right? So I think that would be my perspective on that.
I think law enforcement, it needs to be for law enforcement stuff.
Right, yeah.
Managing school expectations would be school responsibility. And I think the police we've had these conversations as well, and that's obviously coming up on the regular agenda, that they would support us in anything. If we needed to kick somebody out, they'd be supportive of us, but they're not, I don't need them writing, unless it escalates, I don't need them writing tickets to
Right.
trespassing and stuff, unless we decide to do that. I don't want them doing those things, so, but it sounds like everybody's okay with creating some expectations that I can bring forward, and then if there's additional cost that may need to address some of these things, I can share those if that's something.
Lydia,
We hire-
sorry.
We hire staff for some of the games, right? Is there a way to, not all staff would be willing to be like just it's basically just a body supervising. A presence helps in some regards, but would staff be allowed to do that, or would it have to be admin?
Well, I mean, if it's a ticket taker or stuff like that, those are paid positions. in regards to that.
Right, but I mean, like, if they were doing, you know, I know that they.
Supervisory stuff, I mean, we have some people like at the gate.
We have site supervisors.
Site supervisors, we have gate people at like, you know, at the northwest side of the park, is where the football team comes and the band comes in. There's somebody there that's stationed there for the gates to open and close it for those people to get limited access and things. So I think there's potential options for that.
Volunteers or no?
I don't think it's tough enough to get volunteers for ticket takers. I think it'd be tough to, I think you'd wanna make sure that
Yeah.
you did some vetting and some, because handling kids is not always the easiest.
Right.
Or adults sometimes, as Katie, students.
Hang on, Olivia, sorry, I'm gonna make sure everyone's heard.
Just two things. I think this is a great idea, but I don't want to change the culture completely because if we all went through going to games and just kind of being tied to a parent at all times, I think possibly looking at age bands as far as what type of restrictions there start to be. That and going in and out of games, I don't know if that's a restriction we want to place because I've seen parents that they'll have bottles or something that they'll take out to the car for just parents with very young kids taking toys and stuff out of the car and putting that in and out. So possibly having maybe a stamping system instead of just having a free-for-all flow, but maybe not putting such strong handcuffs on the whole situation. And then, I mean, since we do have control of their education, I think maybe starting to do some decorum training as far as, it doesn't just happen in games, it's when you go to formal dinners, when you go to committees, children should be trained early on, these are the appropriate behaviors in these certain environments. So maybe ramp that up a little bit.
Okay. Well, let me create some of those expectations and then I can bring it back to the board.
Okay. Thank you. Again, for the discussion. And finally, on our agenda tonight is some information in the public content is a draft resolution. This is a requirement of the state for adopting cybersecurity framework. So just, Mr. Moran, do you want to?
I'm gonna defer to Thomas.
Thomas, thank you.
All right, so basically the state of Ohio is just requiring that we formalize our security framework. We already had an informal framework. It's informal because it was just all of the tech team relying on our resources, what NIST does, or ISO, CIS, or NIS4. There's a bunch of different frameworks we could have used. We chose NIST because it's the most commonly used and it's the easiest to be compatible with. We just plug all of our resources down into Google Drive. We use that as our repository. Then we also use Veeam backup for our schools, like backup of all of our physical drives. So basically, we just went through with their framework guidelines, started from top to bottom, identified who the data managers were with me, the backup district person, Mr. Moran, and then all of the information required to be compatible with NIST is all located within that drive. And have you shared that with the?
I shared with them a bunch of your handouts.
So
from
in
handouts
those
a
three
while
different
ago.
folders, those three folders are what bring us in compatibility with NIST, the contents of those folders. I can explain what's inside of them, but it's really just a list of all the software we use, all of the hardware we own, and where it's all located and where those backups are so you can get to them in the case of a data breach.
Do you have-
Any questions?
Questions for Thomas?
Is there a specific standard number from NIST that this is associated with, or is that in those
It's
folders?
NIST core. We're doing NIST core.
So one of the requirements is that you need to be ready for an audit.
Mhm.
So, do you have a pathway to being, like, by this time, you will be ready for an audit?
Yeah, that Google Drive folder, by the time we were done with their framework
Yeah.
guidelines, we were ready for an audit.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're good to go as of adaptation.
Do you have to provide substantiating documentation
Mhm.
for that? Okay.
And it's all
And it's all
located.
there?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all, so they did a really good job of writing out a robust, like, step-by-step of what we needed to provide, and I'm fairly confident that at this point we'd be compliant with the standard.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Any other questions? Again, this is state law. I appreciate you taking the lead on this and taking care of it, Thomas. Thank you. Any other questions?
I would just say that, I think that this is really important for our district, and so where there are resources to pressure test this, given time and scope, I think that we should take advantage of that.
So we also, as a district, we have access to red teaming
Yes.
through Wellberry.
Yes.
We already do independent red teaming, but
Great.
part of NIST compliance is that there's actually a mock portion of it too.
Great.
That we're compliant with.
Great.
And trust me, it's so secure, I can't send emails, nor can I get them
Right.
half the time.
So I
Well,
do
that's
this,
that's another thing, but that's.
right, so I do this for my work, for the
Yes,
duty, and
absolutely.
so we have gone down a multi-year process of doing this, and so again, this is really important.
Yes,
and I'm glad that there are
absolutely.
resources to register.
So another thing about our district is we were very lucky that the amount of physical, like on-prem things that we have that has PIP inside of them is actually
Yeah.
really limited.
Yes.
It's down to basically 4 servers and 2 of them are backups of each other. So it's a little bit more concise than some of the larger like enterprise applications would be, just because of how we're already kind of a security conscious footing.
Yeah.
So it was easy to be combined with an IST.
Thank you, Thomas. Is there anything else for the good of the order before we move to adjournment? Okay. With that being said, may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second,
I'll second.
Mr. Stevens, sorry.
I don't move unless you say something.
May you call the vote, please?
Plyman,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes.
Ernst,
Yes.
McMurray,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
And at 6:13, the work session for the Tipp City Board of Education is adjourned. I looked at him and had a, I was like, it's not Dave, it's not